Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast. We help people combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Kamini Wood. Kamini is the founder and CEO of Live Joy Your Way and the AuthenticMe RiseUp program. An international best-selling author, Kamini is driven to support people of all ages heal the relationship with themselves and to stop outsourcing their self-worth. Her clients become their own confident, resilient self-leader with healthier relationships. Kamini is a certified coach, board certified by the American Association of Drugless Practitioners, holds specialty certifications in Calling in the One, Conscious Uncoupling, NewMoney Story, and Teen Life Coaching. Also trained in conscious parenting, Kamini aims to meet her clients where they are, supporting and guiding them on their journey to where they want to be, both personally and professionally. So please welcome to the show, Kamini Wood. Kamini, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Well, why don't we let people know a little bit more about you and how you got to where you are? Because that's, I think, is an interesting, background to, getting into all these different things that people do. And so if we could, let's tell the audience a little bit about you.
Sure. So personally, I am married and I'm the mother of 5 children. They range in age from 8 to 20. My oldest is actually a professional ballerina up in New York, in upstate New York. So that's my personal life. I'm also mom to 2 dogs and a rabbit. But professionally, I do work with individuals one-on-one on truly helping them, get that when they feel stuck, getting that sense of clarity, a deep sense of self-acceptance, self-awareness, develop their own self-leadership skills in order to move themselves on that trajectory forward, both professionally and personally. The story of how I got here is long, so I'll try not to be too long-winded, but I grew up in a small town in Connecticut. I am the daughter of immigrant parents. And so growing up as an Indian girl in a predominantly white small town, I definitely stuck out. A name like Kamini is not going to go unnoticed. So I think, when I was younger, I wanted, like all kids, we want to fit in, we want to belong. I also knew that my parents worked really, really hard because they were trying to provide for my sister and I. So there was this element of not wanting to be a burden and just really trying to do the right thing all the time. So early on, I think I developed those people-pleasing perfectionism tendencies, not knowing it at the time, but it was the way that I compensated, because if others were happy with me, I belonged to the group, so to speak. And also if I was doing what I should do, I wasn't creating an issue for my parents, who were very busy with building a family for us. So, I took those traits and the way of showing up in the world, through adulthood, which served me well. It served its purpose. I worked really hard, was in the business world, part of the internet boom, and then eventually found my way managing my husband's law firm, helped him build it up, worked with individuals within the practice on really helping them figure out their professional trajectory. I always have been a very empathetic person. So I built really personal relationships with the people who worked at the firm and really helped them, not professionally, but also personally, just in where they wanted to head. As I mentioned, I'm a mom of 5. I definitely will say that my children were my personal catalyst because I started seeing them show those people-pleasing tendencies, those perfectionist tendencies. And when I was able to see it in them, I was able to realize that they were getting that from me. And I could see, because of now being in the mom role, right? I was able to see how that could keep them kind of in a box, or keep them from really living into what they truly wanted, because they were worried so much about pleasing others. And as I realized that they were getting that from me, that's that moment that I say it's my catalyst to say, I need to do my own self-work and recognize and release some of those external validations, the need for external validations. So I did go through my own self-transformation process. So you have that on the personal side, you have the business side, and I just ended up marrying the two and realizing that my true calling is to work with people one-on-one, helping high performers recognize that stuckness that they feel is really most probably some type of limiting belief or false belief that they've been carrying with them. Not to say that it's a problem or it's wrong, but just it's gotten them to a certain point. And if they want to continue to move forward, by unpacking that and working through that, they can shift it into beliefs that really would support them going forward.
And it's interesting you mentioned that you said belief several times, which is critical because it is a mindset, but that those really direct our lives. Can you explain that a little bit? You've done that in a previous podcast, I know, and that's where I got this question from because it was really interesting. If you could explain a little bit of that.
Explain just beliefs in general, where they come from?
Yeah.
So, well, the way that I see it is a lot of the beliefs that we have accumulated have happened through either messages we've received as we're growing up, experiences that we've received, and we've internalized them and they've created a meaning. We've brought in that meaning. So for me, my personal beliefs and those false beliefs that I had were, in order to prove my worth, I needed to ensure that people were happy. That's where that belief was. I'm only good enough if I am a people pleaser, if I am making others happy. And so when we can recognize where those are coming from and we become aware of it, we then can start acknowledging and accepting it. It's not about judging it and saying, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't be like that. It's just merely coming to this compassionate acceptance of that's how I've been. And then and how do I want to move forward and what's actually true? So for me, I recognize my worth wasn't coming from making people happy. And it wasn't coming from the accomplishments I was creating. It was coming from my value system, my core gifts, my actual being. And when I was able to embrace that's that shift from the belief is attached to something else. It's attached to making people happy. And I shifted it into, no, I'm the right being as I am. And as I show up, that's the gift, right? Then I was able to move forward from there.
And that gives you tremendous strength going forward. I think that's because your foundation is solid. And I think that gives you a good, like you said, a good aspect of, okay, now I can really help others because I know where I'm coming from is solid. It's a good foundation and I can really dig in and help. And it was interesting too, you being a mother of so many, you see those tendencies as a mother, that empathetic eye and ear, if you will, it's right in the forefront. And you can expand that to other people. That's, a great asset you have with that. I think it's harder for men to do that, although, that may be changing, but I think it's just women have a natural tendency with the empathy, and it's a great asset. It's interesting too, in this, you talk about taking the time or slowing down to look at your self-evaluation, if you will. Mm-hmm. But our society runs at 900 miles an hour. How do you do that? How do you slow down to take that time?
It's really funny because I've had several clients almost say, well, how do I slow down? Right, how do I take the time? And the truth is, it's a conscious choice, right? It's actually taking ownership, because if we're not willing to slow down, nothing is going to shift. So it comes back to, what are we willing to actually take ownership of? Otherwise, if we're not willing to do that one little bit, we're not willing to say, okay, I have to slow it down to look at this, patterns aren't going to change.
Yeah. People, they have the heart attack and then they change the diet. It's
right. Exactly. It's about doing that work up front before it becomes even bigger, right? And it's not to say once you have the heart attack, you can't get better from that, but it's why would you get there if you can do something before?
Right, exactly. You dig the well while, without the water rather than after the rain. So,
right.
It's, those are good philosophies, is let's be prepared. I mean, we're knowledgeable beings, so why not prepare? But I think that's what our society tends not to do, is they don't want to prepare and take that time, like you said. If we do, we found out our foundation is much better, but that's hard sometimes. And I fall into that category. How do I slow down? And I'm realizing as I get older.
Yeah. I mean, and I've definitely, and I always say, even with my clients, like, we're going to do the work, but you're human. We ebb and flow. So there are going to be moments where you're triggered back into an old pattern. It's just, you can get back to center in a shorter amount of time. But the truth is, and I love what you're saying about foundation, because that's what it is. It's that relationship with self. I often say this, is that the most important relationship you have is the one with yourself. That's the one that's that foundation. And then from there, you can have the relationships with others. But if we don't take the time to build that up, we have those holes in that foundation, the cracks. And what happens with a cracked foundation?
Yeah, we've all seen that. Another topic you mentioned in one of your other podcasts that triggered my mind was procrastination. Yeah, ow, you can just see people squirming with this.
Yep,
Wait a
yep.
sec. Tell us a little bit, because you say it's different than being lazy. And if you
Yeah.
could explain more of that to us, please.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of people will just say, I'm just a procrastinator. It's a way to say I'm just lazy. The truth is, the way that I see it, I do feel like a lot of times we're procrastinating because there's a fear. There's a latent fear or some fear behind the scenes. Is it a fear of failure? Is it a fear of just not getting it done well? Is it whatever the fear may be? That's the thing that's keeping us and triggering the avoidance. And
Right.
so when we can just break that down and we can say, okay, what am I actually afraid of here? When I put this thing off, what's motivating me to put it off? What is the story behind the scenes? Again, we go back to slowing down, actually doing the work to be aware, because nothing changes if we're not aware. So if we're just willing to say I'm a procrastinator, just leave it at that, we're not going to move on from it. So it's to really get clear of what is that story, or what is the thing keeping me from avoiding that. And then once we're aware of it, now we can start taking aligned action. And so especially with procrastination, it comes down to what's one step that I can do that's not so scary and move myself forward, right? And then it's the domino effect. Once you do that one step, you're like, oh, that wasn't so hard. Okay, let me keep going. And then you go through the process of getting whatever it is completed.
I keep trying to tell my 23-year-old that too. Just take the step. You've got to get this stuff. His car recently broke. It won't go into drive. It goes in reverse just fine, but you can't drive around town that way. And
You go in reverse.
It's time for a new car. So take the steps. Get rid of the old one. Get it out of my driveway. Okay, come on, let's go. Look at a car. What do you want to spend? Let's get it figured out. Get this done.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it like you said, that fear that holds us back. I think that's a lot of people's curtain that they'll hide behind. And we've all done it. It's, I'll do that tomorrow. Well, what if we don't wake up tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't.
Yep.
And what if you don't tell that loved one, hey, I love you? Or what if you don't kiss your kids or tell them you love them and something happens? I don't want to put the fear, be a fear monger, but life happens. Okay.
Yeah.
And it could happen. Something could sway you where you don't have the time to do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. But if you do it, like you said, just that minute, then if you do it right now, you don't have the time to think about the woulda, coulda, shoulda, the what if scenarios, and you can just get it done.
Yep, exactly.
Do you find that with that idea, I mean, like you said, it's not laziness because there's a fear. How do you help people then extrapolate what that fear may be? Is it just going through their timeline, their actions? What is it?
A lot of times we can break it down into, are we afraid of the outcome? Or are we afraid of the action? Right? Because a lot of times it's that we're attached to a specific outcome, and the fear is we're not going to get that outcome. So once we name it, we're aware of it, we can break it down into, well, what's 1, 2, 3, 4 steps that we're not afraid to take. And then we start working through those. Because a lot of times it's this attachment to an outcome. And if we can become slightly non-attached, and I'm being very aware of the fact that I'm more using the word non-attached versus detached, because detached means I just don't care. Right. Non-attached is I'm setting out this idea and this goal or this intention, if you will. And I'm also going to allow it to evolve as it's meant to evolve. I'm going to take the steps and allow it to evolve. So when we are so attached to an outcome, that's where the fear really comes in. And so when we say, okay, well, like, for instance, I was talking to you right before we started this recording. My son just signed to play Division I lacrosse. Well, sure, there's been fear all along the way of how is this going to evolve? How is the whole thing going to come to a culmination? And that could have kept him from starting or from doing any of it. And instead it was, what actions does he need to break that up into that he can take in order to get to that goal? And now, yes, that culminated in him signing his letter of intent, which is amazing. And also it's exactly what we talk about with the clients about fear. It's, well, if we release the attachment to, it's got to come out this specific way.
Right.
Start taking the actions that you're not afraid of, which meant getting to the field at 6:30 in the morning.
Right. But like you said, you can't have some goals that you want. You can't have a specific way that it's going to occur. It's
Yep.
just, life, you think you're going down one path, and life will say, no, we're going down this one.
Yeah.
It's interesting you said that as you became a parent, how you saw things differently. And I've explained that to my kids when I was coaching baseball with them. As a parent, you get to see things from a helicopter viewpoint.
Yeah.
And you're above the bushes and you see where that path they're going down, which way to turn left and right, and where it will lead. They don't see that because they're in the midst of everything. And it's good to remind people, be flexible with what life offers you. I mean, do you see overcoming things? Do you see humor being a good aspect of people in integrating that into people's life?
Oh, humor and joy. Absolutely. It's, finding things in each and every day that make you smile. That's one question that I routinely will ask a client, what made you smile today?
Okay.
Because humor, joy, laughter, all of that brings out the natural energy that raises the vibration naturally. Right. And we are able to look around even in the most challenging times and say, okay, so what's one right thing that's happening? What's one right thing, even in this most challenging moment, can I take and learn from, grow from, or take with me to keep moving myself forward?
Great.
Yeah.
And that's so true, because no matter what happens, we got to be able to smile through life. I mean, no matter what it is, you could be in the middle of, fixing whatever around the house and getting your hands filthy, dirty and muddy and whatever. And that end result, you can remember, okay, I'm putting up a fence or whatever, it's going to look great when it's done. You'll have splinters in your hands, your hands might get torn up, you'll be full of dirt, but that end result, wow, that's something that can make you happy. To say, I did that.
Or if you're like me and you're putting something together, you do laugh at yourself as you realize you put it together upside down, and you're like, oh, gotta redo this.
Well, the directions anymore don't have words; it's just pictures.
Right.
Okay. Crazy. One of the other things that I found interesting, changing your internal mindset. It seems to be critical for, if you focus more positively towards things. Do you find that helping people, obviously a positive outlook helps, like you were just saying. Is that something you see common, or do you have to help, like you're certified in teen parenting and things like that? There's a lot of aspects to that. So how do you help get them, to see more positive? Because sometimes teens can be not so positive.
Yeah, that internal voice, that internal critic can be a tough one. And it's about helping them become aware, because what happens is most of us, especially the high performers I work with, right, they're very self-critical. So that voice is kind of mean, but they don't even realize how mean it is. Yeah. And so it's actually taking the time to pay attention to what it is you're even saying to yourself on a daily basis, bringing that up into the awareness and recognizing, wow, that's really mean. How is that even helping me? And challenging the thought, right? So it's about naming the thought and then saying, can I look at this differently? Just like we were joking about the directions, putting something together. Yeah. We were putting up my daughter's couch together, and like you said, it was all pictures. And the immediate self-criticism is, why can't I get this? Like, it's so simple. There's like 6 steps on this thing. And so just even paying attention, noticing like, oh, wow, there's my self-critical voice, something even as simple as that. And then switching it up and just challenging it and saying, well, these pictures, not to give yourself an excuse, but it's like, they're somewhat difficult to understand, and really it's okay. And I'm just going to take my time to look at this and turn the page around. And, it's recognizing it and challenging the way that we're talking to ourselves. It is about adding in self-compassion. And with teens, it can be really hard, because not only are they self-critical, but now they've got the social element that's added in. And it's about helping them also understand boundaries, and not just physical boundaries, but those energetic boundaries of what are you going to allow into your space and what are you not. And it's really, really important, not just for teens, but for adults, to take a look at how we may have de-selfed, yes. And when I say de-selfed, I do mean the self-criticism, the putting ourselves down, the looking at every negative thing about ourselves, and also checking out of, what we're feeling, what we're needing. So it's really about coming back into that, recognizing what I feel, what I need, who I am, what my personal strengths are, realigning with that, and then setting out those boundaries to allow that other people are going to have their thoughts and opinions.
Yeah.
But they don't have to become ours.
No. No, definitely. It's interesting because as a teenager, some of those things get so bound into your system, into your being, that you carry them into adulthood. So like you were saying with some of your adult clients, that's something you're kind of, if you will, re-engineering them to let go of some.
Absolutely. Because it happens not just as children, but through teens and even young adulthood, because I work with some college students, and they're battling the same thing.
Right. That, and the part of it is not knowing, I think you have to remind them a lot that you got to realize people don't care as much as you think they do, and you don't really realize that until you're in your 50s and 60s that, people really don't care what I'm doing.
Right. Or maybe they cared for that 5 minutes that they chose to comment, and then they went on with their lives. Like they didn't actually give it another thought. No. And here you are ruminating about it for years.
Right. Guess what? They don't care what you're wearing most of the time.
Right.
So it's interesting too, because with that you talk about the self relationships, and this is part of that. Is it those self relationships? Do you find it to be more in the younger crowd than the older crowd, or do you get a mix of everything like that? Okay.
Yeah, I do think that the self relationship. There are people who are younger who can recognize that they've got to work on that, and then I've got definitely that handful of people who come to me in their 50s and they're just like, I don't really know who I am. And the I don't know who I am is what I was referring to before of the de-selfing, where we go through life and we are looking for those validations, or we have the false beliefs that we're carrying with us, like I'm not good enough, or I don't belong, or I'm always going to be alone, whatever it may be. And we're constantly trying to get that filled from the outside. And so we lose the ability to really know who we are, what we like. And, that's truly where codependency comes from when we think about it. And maybe the overfunctioning, right? Overfunctioning, overgiving to others in order to create that for ourselves. So it can affect us all throughout life. It's just really, when are we willing to slow it down and to re-engage and realign with that relationship with ourselves?
And that's a good reminder for people. I can't say that enough, and I'm saying it for my own sake. So don't get me wrong on this. We've got to learn to slow down, and I appreciate you reminding people of that in our society. That's every which way to Sunday is constantly going 900 miles an hour. So that's take the time. It won't hurt in the grand scheme of things to take an hour and focus on yourself, or a half hour twice a day if you want, or something like that.
It's funny. I will have to remind myself at times too, and I'll just say, who are you racing? Yeah. Who are you racing right now?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, did I eat today? You start to forget simple things that you really need.
Right.
Oh, okay. With some of the other things you do, it was interesting that in your bio it mentions NewMoney
Story.
Yeah. Well, tell us about that, because that intrigues me. My first book was about money saving strategy. So
oh, how cool.
Yeah.
Well, the NewMoney Story, the reason why I ended up studying it and actually doing that certification wasn't necessarily to be a money coach or any of that regards. What I loved about it was it came back to the stories we tell about money, right? So when we're willing to or wanting to move our finances in a different direction, the work goes back to the stories we've told ourselves. So it's all intertwined with the work that I do. It all comes back to a relationship with self. And to be fair, most of the conscious uncoupling, the calling in the one, all of those specialty certifications, while yes, it's relationship focused for those, it all for me comes back to how do we relate to ourselves? How do we see ourselves? Because again, can't call in the one if that relationship with self is still got those little holes in it. Got to have that solid foundation. And also when we're in a relationship that may not have worked well and we want to break those patterns, it's about recognizing what's my part, what's the piece of me that I might need to take a look at. And it's not about being broken or being wrong. It's just maybe shifting into a different way of seeing myself so that I don't repeat the same patterns again.
And I think that's critical that you said that for people. It's not about blaming or being wrong. It's, we all have feelings and whatnot. We can shift. We can change our direction starting today and going forward. We don't have to keep everything we've had in the past with us. I think that's a big one that people need to remember is stop carrying a bag of rocks from your past. It does you no good.
Yeah. Let the weight go.
Right. Well, and it like you said, it allows you then to straighten up, turn around, and see who you are, what you've done, and okay, we've done that. That's in the past. Now, what are we going to do in the future?
Yep. Exactly.
Great. I find it interesting too, because as we've talked about, there's beliefs and the procrastination. You triggered on a couple things that you've mentioned in some of your previous podcasts about, we don't deserve to be loved, or I'll never find the right person, or there's no point to dream big. Those aspects are like those bags of rocks. We need to get those out of our mind and refocus on our value.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you find that, you've got to remind people of that a lot?
I do, especially the work that I do and the people that I end up working with, a lot of them are carrying those rocks. And the rocks really do become, I don't deserve more than this, or this is as good as it's going to get. Because again, with high performers, a lot of times there's never quite good enough. I'm always trying to prove my worth to something or someone. And so it is about reminding them, that first of all, you are right being as you are. And it's about not the true you now, right? Like that may have worked for when you were younger. And again, no judgment. It's that got me to here. But if I'm ready and willing and I want to move forward, I might have to shift and recognize what's true for me now is I am this person at this age, at this time, in this present moment. And I can step into my worth as I am. I can step into, I deserve to be loved. I deserve to, create happiness for myself. And from that place, start taking those aligned actions forward.
And that's always a good aspect for people to remember, because it can happen anytime. You could be 20, you could be 50, you could be 70. And we all deserve that time where that light bulb comes on. And we can move forward with those great aspects we have in our lives. So that's great. Kamini, where can people find out more about you and your website and information about you? Because this is good stuff. I mean, we need this in our society. So I want to make sure they can get a hold of you.
I am on the internet at KaminiWood.com, and on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, my handle is It's Authentic Me.
Okay. On Pinterest too. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, that's a great audience for what you do. I know it's a big one. And we'll have all that information in the show notes for everybody to make sure we have that. We'll be documenting that, and that will be out there. Kamini, I wanted to thank you today for taking the time to be on the show, being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate your time today. The information has been great. Really look forward to getting this out to the listeners so they can enjoy it as well.
Thank you so much. So much fun.
Great. Thanks. You have a good one.
You too.